often take certain words for granted, thinking their meaning is obvious. Take darkness, for instance. Simple enough, right? But what if a single word for darkness could actually unveil entire cultural beliefs, emotional landscapes, and just surprising depths of meaning, especially when we dive into ancient languages? So today, we're embarking on a deep dive into one particularly intriguing Hebrew word, pronounced shel. We've basically sifted through a whole stack of sources, articles, lexicons, scholarly research, all focused on this one word to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight for you.
That's exactly it. Understanding Shrill, it goes way beyond just a simple dictionary definition, really. It's about uncovering these layers of meaning that profoundly reflect physical states, emotional landscapes, even spiritual conditions embedded right within the ancient texts. It's kind of a shortcut, actually, to being well-informed about a concept we often just gloss over in our modern world.
Okay, so let's unpack shell. What's the very first sort of fundamental thing our sources tell us about its core definition? Anything surprising there?
Well, the sources are pretty consistent. They define geoprimarily as darkness or gloom. Pretty straightforward. But here's a crucial distinction right off the bat. It's often not just any darkness. It frequently refers specifically to think darkness. Ooh, that suggests a profound, almost palpable obscurity.
Thick darkness. Okay, that immediately gives it more intensity than just, say, dim light. And what about its linguistic makeup? Technically speaking, what makes Ophel stand out?
Yeah, that's fascinating too. Grammatically, lexically.
Yeah.
It's a masculine noun, and critically, it's described as a poetic word. It only shows up in poetic contexts in these ancient texts. So it wasn't your everyday casual term for dark. And importantly, it's always used in its absolute form.
Absolute form. What does that mean in practice?
It basically means it stands alone, grammatically. It isn't, inflected for possession or other relationships that would directly tie it to another noun.
Yeah.
It gives it a certain standalone force, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that standalone force makes a lot of sense, especially for poetry. And if we trace it back, the root of the word, I think scholars label it 651 sometimes, it signifies things like dusk, obscurity, or even privily, like secretly.
Exactly. So right from the root, this word suggests more than just a lack of light. There's already a hint of something hidden, something veiled.
Okay, so let's start our journey into Joel in the most concrete place, the physical world. But even here, you're saying it's not just about dim light. It's about how this particular word evokes these profound physical experiences. How do the sources show its literal use?
Right. The literal use is quite evocative. We see it describing the darkness of night, for instance. Psalm 91, verse 6 contrasts it sharply with Fahal Kawayarim, which means midday, the brightest part of the day. The text there says Ophel Yahalok, meaning something like walks in darkness.
Yep.
It suggests being completely enveloped. Then there's another really vivid literal use, deep darkness in the earth. Job 28, verse 3 talks about even an Ophel, a stone of darkness.
The stone of darkness.
Yeah. And it powerfully parallels Haven Koshek, which is a more general word for darkness, and also Simanach Somavet, deep shadow or shadow of death. It really suggests this profound subterranean darkness, something associated with hidden, maybe even unyielding depths.
That image in Job 28, the stone of darkness, it's so stark. It feels ancient, solid, almost like the darkness itself has substance down there. It's incredibly powerful imagery.
It really is. And it extends even further to the darkness or gloom of the underworld.
Yeah.
In Job chapter 10, verse 22, it's described as Hiven came up fell alvet, meaning like the darkness of deep shadow.
Yeah.
This directly links Midashel to a land of darkness, underscoring this sense of ultimate concealment and maybe even foreboding.
What's really striking there, listening to this, is that even when it's just describing physical darkness, the sources point out that Sheol often carries this associated meaning, like gloom, depression, or terror. So it's not just about what you can't see physically, but about the sort of heavy emotional weight of that absence. It's inherently loaded, isn't it?
Precisely. It's rarely just neutral darkness. There's often more going on emotionally.
Okay. But the real power of Sheol, maybe, emerges when we look beyond the literal. This is where it starts to paint not just a physical void, but this whole emotional and spiritual landscape.
How does this word expand metaphorically to describe things like misfortune or spiritual blindness?
Ah, yes. This is where it gets really fascinating, I think. One major metaphorical use is for calamity, misery, or misfortune. The sources say it's especially used figuratively of calamity. Take Job 23, verse 17. It reads, Kisafel, meaning something like darkness covered me. It explicitly points to a state of misfortune.
And in Job 30, verse 26, it stands in opposition to kara, or the word for light. This contrast really emphasizes its negative meaning as misfortune. So Cheol carries this deep sense of foreboding, almost inherently linking darkness with adversity.
So it's not just the absence of light, it's the presence of distress, of something bad happening.
Exactly. Then you've got spiritual darkness or blindness. Like in Isaiah 29, verse 18, the phrase Kariol, Umi Ophel, Umi Koshek means from darkness and from gloom. Here it directly parallels the other darkness word we mentioned. This implies a profound lack of understanding, a lack of perception, a sort of spiritual inability to see truth. It also gets used to describe secrecy, treachery, or ambush. Psalm 11, verse 2, speaks of more few, easy, or bimorifel, which translates roughly to shoot in darkness. The context here clearly implies a place of ambush or acting privily, secretly. It suggests hidden, probably nefarious activity.
It's pretty remarkable how one word for darkness can stretch like that. From literal twilight to embodying deceit and hidden malice. And then there's an even more intense usage, right? Something even more active.
Absolutely. There's a particularly vivid example where Rushel is actually personified. In Job chapter 3, verse 6, the text says, Nokasfi, Yika hihu Ophel. It means, let darkness take it. This paints darkness not just as an absence or even a condition, but as an active, almost predatory entity, something that can seize or consume.
Wow. That idea of darkness actively taking something, it feels really primal, doesn't it? As if the darkness itself is a living force to be reckoned with.
Indeed, it taps into something deep, maybe a universal human fear. It elevates darkness from just a state of being to this active, almost predatory thing. This is where you really see the power of language in these ancient texts.
So bringing all these different meanings together, the literal, the metaphorical, the personified, what's the overarching picture of seal that emerges? And why should this deeper understanding matter to us, as we read these texts today?
Well, I think it highlights the incredible versatility of Shech. How this single word can encapsulate physical absence, sure, but also deep despair, moral corruption, and even, as we saw, an active personified force. It tells us that ancient Hebrew had this really sophisticated way of expressing not just the what of darkness, but the profound how it feels and what it means on multiple levels.
And this word, shek, it isn't operating in isolation, is it? Our sources mention it's often deeply interwoven with a whole family of Hebrew words for darkness, each one adding its own flavor. How does it connect to those other terms?
Right, that's a key point. It's part of a larger network. What's fascinating is looking at its common parallels and synonyms. Koshek, which we mentioned, is another widely used word for darkness. It frequently appears in parallel with Shech, suggesting they overlap conceptually quite a bit. We saw that in Isaiah 29 and Job 28.
Then there's Ashea-Philah, which also means darkness or gloom. It's explicitly paralleled in Isaiah 29.18. Using them together often seems to be for emphasis, to really drive home the intensity. And when describing really profound gloom, especially like in the underworld or deep within the earth, Giel gets paralleled with Salmavet. That word is often translated as deep shadow or even darkness of death. You see that in Job 10 and Job 28. It really emphasizes an intense, often ominous darkness.
So these words aren't just interchangeable synonyms. It's more like they're painting different shades of a similar picture, building on each other's meanings.
Precisely. It's about nuance. And the sources also mention other related terms like kashika, or kashak, oshak, and kafa, and alata. They all kind of fall under this broad umbrella of darkness, but each likely carried its own subtle connotation. And of course, like with many concepts, its intensity is really sharpened by its opposites, its antonyms. You mentioned Zol is directly contrasted with Kwet, or meaning light, in Job 30, and with Kweth, Saharayim, midday in Psalm 91. That stark opposition really helps define its depth and feel, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The contrast clarifies the extremity. And, connecting this to the bigger picture, it's interesting to see how other languages try to capture these nuances. The Septuagint, that ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, it used words like skotos, nuphos, and scotia. These choices weren't random. They often seem to reflect not just simple darkness, but that deeper sense of gloom or thick obscurity we talked about. They echo Sheol's intensity, emphasizing its emotional and symbolic weight.
And what does all this mean for you listening to this? Well, understanding these relationships, these connections and contrasts, it really allows you to appreciate the rich, multifaceted vocabulary of ancient Hebrew. It shows how specific word choices weren't accidental. They were meant to evoke distinctly different shades of meaning and emotion within the text. It's like seeing the full spectrum of darkness, not just one flat color.
Yeah, this deep dive into Chius really hammers home that even seemingly simple words can be incredibly complex linguistic lenses. They offer these profound insights into the beliefs, the fears, the wisdom of the people who use them. It's so much more than just a definition in a lexicon. It's really a window into an ancient worldview.
Absolutely. And, well, considering all the many shades of darkness we've explored today through Sheep of Will, here's a thought to maybe mull over. What does it make you consider about the light in your own experiences? And maybe how the absence of light, in all its forms, might shape your own perception? We definitely encourage you to keep an eye out for spell or its parallels. If you happen to encounter these biblical texts, you might just see them in a whole new light, or perhaps a whole new, very specific kind of darkness.